Welcome to the FiveStack. Really great to be here. We're just kind of having a little laugh talking about how Jim Acosta's on his Substack right now gloating over the AP winning their lawsuit against Trump. Judge basically said, hey, listen, Trump, quit being a dick. AP totally is entitled to a level playing field. You got to put them back in the press pool, Air Force One, wherever they're a legitimate press source and one of the best. Hi, Ellie. Nice to see you. Anyway, that was
That's
fun.
great.
When I got
It's
on the
great news.
Substack while I was waiting for you, it was like a little media schadenfreude. Really enjoyed it.
It's so important, and I mean, Trump's trying to push the press as far as he can, and especially that press pool, which is such a great group of people. If you've ever been around them, they're such dedicated professionals, and that place is kind of hallowed ground. So it's good to see that at least the AP gets back in there, and some of these other nimrods that are there shouldn't be there at all. These people
Nimrods like Tim Pool.
like Tim Pool. I mean, what's he doing in the White House press pool? I
He's
don't
a
understand
Russian
it.
asset. We've talked about this.
I
It was
know, I know
outed
that.
like a year ago. He's
That
totally a Russian asset. The only podcaster I know that got paid $400,000 a month to do pro-Russian content, and they pretend like I had no idea where that money was coming from.
yeah.
But AP hopefully gets the Tim Pool seat back and he gets jettisoned. But that was great news. AP's back in the game. They're a judge sided with them today, which is great. A nice little
But the
five and a
original
half stack.
Yeah, the original lawsuit was about whether they would use a certain term. I think it was the Gulf of America or Gulf of
Yeah,
Mexico.
yeah.
Are we any clearer on what it is? Is it the Gulf of
It's
Mexico,
the
Gulf of
Gulf of
America?
Mexico still. Yeah,
It
that's the
still
great
is.
fucking part. And
Okay.
I was laughing today because that was part of the judge's ruling. She's like, "It's the fucking Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
Like you can't just decide." And by the way, the map of the Gulf of Mexico
Yeah.
that is permanently and perpetually behind Donald Trump's Oval Office desk
Yes.
makes me laugh every single time.
Because it's
Every
all got to
time.
do with oil drilling rights, basically. Biden put an embargo on any oil drilling to go on, or any new oil drilling to go on
Yeah.
in the Gulf of Mexico. So they've renamed it the Gulf of America, hoping to get away with it. And guess what? It's not going to work. The judge said no. It's
Yeah.
still very much the Gulf of Mexico. It's a lot of what is going on in the Trump administration these days. Things are not
Yeah.
working so well, and certainly not
No.
on the markets. The stock markets are just still so turbulent.
Yeah.
Yesterday, he seemed to have a bit of a reprisal. I guess people started believing some of the bullshit he put out in yesterday's afternoon press conference with Bibi Netanyahu. But it's not really to be believed. I mean, at the end of the day, this thing is based on phony formulas. It's based on revisionist history. And at
Mhm.
the end of the day, it's just too much of a weird thing that the war is landing up being between Xi and Trump, between China and the United States. It's so contrived. And the reason
Yeah.
why it's so contrived is because, people talk about Donald Trump and Russia, Russia, Russia a lot. They don't talk about China, China, China a lot, but there's way more China in the Trump empire, especially these days, than Russia. So when you look at this complex, relationship going on, and they're trying to reconstruct the infrastructure of the economies of the world, and basically reduce the value of the American dollar, you can't look at that without saying, hey, but the people who own that SPAC that gave him the Truth Social empire, the $500 million or whatever it is that he got from the Truth Social SPAC, that's owned by Chinese money. That is China's money. So is he really doing the business of America, or is he doing the business of China by
Mhm.
starting this trade war? And then it begins to look like just a giant conflict of interest. And I'll just remind everyone, and this is our number 5 story, by the way, we should mention.
That's good.
I'll remind everyone that he was the guy who sort of let COVID into America. You remember when COVID first broke out, for the first 21 days, his response was kind of lukewarm. He didn't really react in the way people wanted a person to react in response to a pandemic. He congratulated Xi for his successful handling of COVID, and in fact, we found out later that it wasn't very successfully handled because guess what? 1 million people died,
Yeah.
and so I'm not saying it was a coordinated, although it could have been coordinated effort by the two of them to get a pandemic into America. But, he asked us to trust him back then with bleach injections and a whole bunch of other things. And I hate to remind people of all this, like,
Coffee colonics. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Dirt
PTSD.
pills.
It is all PTSD for all of us. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, it's also a sense, it gives us a sense of what kind of person he is, his relationship with the Chinese, his relationship with Xi. And we can't really trust him, I mean,
Yeah.
that goes without saying, but we can't really trust this guy.
It's absolutely true. You can't trust him.
Mm.
I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. And I'm glad we're starting here with the FiveStack and the tariffs in China. Just to roll it back to COVID, I think it's a bridge too far for me to be able to say, he was working with China to infect North America. I
I
think
didn't
that
say
just
that. I didn't say that.
no, no,
I
no,
said,
no. I know
yeah,
you didn't say
yeah,
that, but
yeah.
I'm saying like I don't know if there was that much collusion. I know there was ineptitude,
He was
but
slow in the response. And there's
yeah,
no doubt the response was very
yeah.
tepid, if not kind of just pathetic by America. Remember, it spread like wildfire in those 21 days. Had he taken other measures, we would have seen something different. Whether that was intentional or not, let's assume that it's not intentional, obviously.
Mhm.
But it certainly looks and smacks like a lot of incompetence. As does this tariff out roll. This rolling out of these
Yeah.
tariffs. It's just incompetent. It's just not well handled. And I think that's what I'm saying. I'm not suggesting in any way massive collusion or anything like that. I am saying that this is not a very effective administration when it comes to executing on crises.
Yeah, simply Cat just said he's stupid, not intentional. Great
Yeah,
phrase.
yeah.
Nothing he does is intentional. Everything he does is intentionally stupid, including these tariffs, which brings us up to speed. Today, Trump announced and the administration announced that he was going to slap 104, 105% tariff on every Chinese good that comes into the United States of America. Effectively goes tomorrow. That's when it starts. China replied, no, we're going to do the exact same thing to you. And they have no intention of backing down. And Trump has no intention of backing down. And as that was going on, it was interesting, right? Because not only are we going to be swallowed by a softwood lumber tariff, goes from 14.4 to I think 35% tomorrow. Not only is Canada, yeah, I mean, we're going to hit back with our auto tariffs. That's going to happen tomorrow as well. But I started to laugh today because not only, as you pointed out, are all these tariffs based on this magical formula, which doesn't even work. Any mathematician looks at it, doesn't make any sense because it's not. It's stupid. But it's fascinating because you're seeing the pushback of people that are watching the stock market collapse that have a vested interest in their stock price. And you're starting to watch billionaires turn on Donald Trump, billionaires who are doing business with countries like China. And I want to bring one of those people up because he's really the de facto president of the United States. President Elon Musk is there was an earth-shaking, earth-shattering, absolutely fucking hilarious tweet exchange between Peter Navarro and Elon Musk. By the way, you can call him Ron Vera if you want. That's his stage name. Peter Navarro, Elon Musk, and Kimball Musk, who's Elon's brother and a board member at Tesla. And this is how you know that Donald Trump, A, doesn't know what he's fucking doing, B, is now bringing the ire of all the tech oligarchs and billionaires. Because listen, you can do a lot of things to a billionaire. What you can't do is fuck with his billions. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing. So you're seeing guys like Ackman go after him. You're seeing Mark Cuban's been after him this whole time. You're seeing the entire billionaire industrial complex go after him right now. The only people that you're seeing out there go, yeah, this is a great idea, are fucking moron patriots like Cat Turd, Howard Lutnick, and Peter Navarro, who started this trade war with his de facto Ron Vera economist take that tariffs are going to make America rich again. So, anyway, I want to get to this tweet real
Wasn't Peter
quick.
Navarro just in prison recently? I mean, this guy
For
is
4 months.
he's a felon. I mean, it's like, you know, what? How is he
But he
running
went
trade
to jail
policy?
for Trump, dude. He went to jail for Trump. So
That makes him loyal.
yeah,
That makes
so
him a
so
member of the
and
family.
this is like
Right,
Cosa Nostra in
right.
America. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but the funny part of this whole thing was Kimball Musk is so fed up with losing money at Tesla. They were down another 14% today, the biggest single drop in Tesla's history. Another
Right.
14. They're down to like 221 a share. They're at 480 like 3 months ago. It's
Yeah.
fucking beautiful to watch. Kimball Musk is like, I'm pretty sure.
But they're not blaming the trade war, are they? Are they saying it's the
Oh
trade
no,
war?
no. Listen, that's most of that self-inflicted. But
Yeah.
as we know, when the stock market goes down, it all goes
All goes
down,
down.
right?
It's
And
sinking ships.
especially like cancerous brands like Elon Musk or
Yeah.
Tesla or SpaceX, and then you combine that with the 105% tariff on China. Well, who makes all the parts for his SpaceX
Right.
rockets and all this other stuff? So he's going to pay 100% more for everything, and he's like, whoa, stop! Elon apparently has been begging. I put a post out on my Substack. If you go to substack.deanblundell.com, you can read it. Elon is begging Trump to stop these tariffs, and Kimball Musk came out from under the shadows with a fucking suplex. He's like, "Hey, by the way, I'm pretty sure Trump he effectively called him, and I'm going to say the word. You're going to get really upset with me. I hope you don't. But he used the R word. He said this is effectively why Trump brought back the R word, which is retard. And and, and then it was on. Then
So childish.
Peter Navarro comes out from the top rope, and he's like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Kimball Musk's an idiot, and Elon doesn't make cars; he only assembles them." And then Elon Musk hits back with a tweet today. I couldn't believe it. MAGA's eating itself over these
I
tariffs.
love
By the way.
that. I love
I
that.
love it too. And Peter Navarro comes back with where Elon comes back, and I hate Elon Musk just as much as everybody else does, but I had to give him credit for this tweet, even though it's a terrible word and you should be wiped from your lexicon. He called him Peter Retardo,
Oh,
and I was like, oh my god, this is like fucking inmates running the asylum, as if the inmates had never progressed past like
like
the age of
kindergarten.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a schoolyard fight. I mean, this is like billions of dollars at stake. The entire US
Oh,
economy is potentially at
it's
stake. The future of the US dollar, people's 401ks, and they're busy calling each other retards. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah. On social
yes.
media in front of like
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of people, and they're in
Yeah.
charge of the fucking United
Yeah.
States of America military.
How
Like
about you
this,
get your act together? You busy cutting Social Security on the one hand. Is he still there? Is he still part of Doge? Is he actually still
well,
at work?
it depends on who's asking. Like if the Senate Intelligence Committee is asking, no.
Yeah,
If Congress is asking, no. If law
but
enforcement's asking, no. But if you're asking, oh, he's in charge, all right. Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
have we seen the breakup? Is this officially it? Is Elon Musk and is the honeymoon over?
I don't know,
The
dude.
wedding over?
Peter Thiel's coming into this whole thing
Oh,
now.
really?
He's starting to tell Peter Navarro he's got to cool it. Apparently, he's telling Trump he's got to cool the tariffs. And here's the thing: is that if you can tell Trump anything, right? If you have more money than him,
Right.
if he wants something from you, and he's going to play you, he might listen to you. But in this second inception, because he's got all three levels of government and he's got this big crypto play coming, and he's lined his pockets over the past several years
Right.
and months, he's not listening to anybody. Apparently, I talked to a friend of mine who knows people that are involved with with Elon Musk, believe it or not, and he's like, dude, like Elon's beside himself. He's in the Oval Office or talking to Trump or talking to his people on a daily basis, saying he's got to stop these fucking tariffs because it's not only not helping his brand, it's cratering the entire stock market. And Tesla used to be the darling of the stock market, and then on top of it, the Chinese tariffs, which are coming into effect. That's a whole other tidal wave of economic loss for Elon Musk that he can't fathom right now.
Is that just performative? I wonder because how could it not be that Elon Musk does not know about the tariff policy that Trump is putting in place? I mean, he's part of the cabinet
No question.
basically,
Yeah.
so he must know it. It's not like he's just saying, "Hey, woe is us." We're losing all this money, and he's talking to all these Silicon Valley billionaires who are losing all this money, and they're losing a lot of money for sure. They get sold a bill of goods, but they must have been aware of this broader strategy to cut to implement this tariff war. There's no other ways that this would have happened. I don't think I just can't see a situation where Elon Musk would not know about something like that.
I think they thought they would get some waivers where their
Yeah,
businesses were concerned. And the interesting thing is your friend David Sachs came out today.
my friend.
Your friend David Sachs, yeah, I know you, South African friend,
Yeah,
uh, puts out a tweet this morning, and a lot of different like Peter Salter, Curtis Yarvin, all the fucking douchebags, a bunch of other billionaire mega guys put out, or millionaire, not the billionaires. The billionaires are like Jamie Dimon from J.P. Morgan's like, whoa, that's enough. But David Sachs came out and he goes, so much for the Black Monday hoax that was yesterday, right? It's
hmm
over. And you saw the markets sort of start to go up a little bit, and you saw different people tweeting about how there was no recession. And it's sort of, if you watch the markets and you watch these different tweets and how well they were placed and how they were amplified, you watch the markets rally this morning. At one point, they were up,
I
I
know,
don't know,
crazy.
120
Yeah,
points. And you're like, how is
yeah,
this fucking possible?
yeah.
Well, it's not. At the end of the day, the Dow, the NASDAQ, everybody lost between 2 to 4 percentage points again, 800 points in 30 minutes to close at the closing bell of the markets today. Because you can't tweet your way through a fucking recession and a depression. You can't tweet your way out of these tariffs. People are fucking too smart. There are too many economists out there. That there are too many fucking brilliant individuals and too many really, really rich people and captains of industry with their businesses going, okay, that's enough. But Trump's not listening. So it dove again today at the end of the day. And
I
as
mean,
much
look,
as that stuff, so many people lost money. I was like, Oh, fuck, of
A
course.
lot of people lost money, but tonight is when these tariffs actually get implemented, the new tariffs in any event, and now the Canadian tariffs on on automobiles get kicked in. So you've
Yeah.
got a lot of new difficult pressures on the economy, and we're going to start seeing this recession talk happening because it's just a reality. We're going to be
Do,
in a recession. There's just no, you can't look at all these and say we're not going to be in a recession.
do you mind if I just kind of briefly tell people
No, please go.
what a tariff is?
Yeah, go for it.
I feel like it's one of those things where, people are like, okay, what is a tariff? It's got to be bad for us. Nobody's saying why it's bad for you, that
Mm,
it's a tax on you. So let me just kind of share with you something that happened to me last week. I ordered something from the United States, sorry, from China. I didn't mean to order from China. I did order it. It came from China, and it arrived at Canadian Customs Border Control.
mhm.
And I got an email from Canadian Customs. They said, "Hey, we've got your item, but you have to pay 30% to get it from us. Otherwise, we're not going to allow it to be delivered, or we're not going to allow you to pick it up."
Right.
So that's called a tariff. It's called a duty.
Mhm.
When you order something from another country that has an affixed tariff or duty to it, which changes according to the whims of anybody, we're seeing it with Donald Trump, and we'll go with lumber in just a second. You have to pay to get that out of Hawk. So if that item was $100 and they add a 30% tariff on it, that's now $130, and they won't deliver it or you won't get it until you pay that 30 extra dollars.
You're
So that
paying for it.
30,
You're paying for it.
you.
Yes.
So in the case of softwood lumber, so tomorrow Trump is leveling a 35% tariff on top, not on top. I think it's an extra 20. So it's an extra 20 on top of the 14.4 on softwood lumber. Now America needs to build homes. They don't have a lot of forests that they can cut down anymore. It's true, and we've been their biggest softwood lumber supplier for generations. That ends tomorrow, and I'll tell you why. Because a 2x4, let's say it costs $10, is now going to cost $13.4. Right? It's going to cost $13.40. Now, if you are constructing a home
Mhm.
and you've already factored in and you're maxed out, you're going to contract your own house. Let's say you're a big building contractor and you order wood in bulk. Doesn't matter how much you've ordered. You're not going to get that until you pay that extra 20% on top of the 14%. They're not even allowed to fucking deliver it. So to get that out of Hawk, you're going to have to pay it. Now, the interesting thing is there's going to be some negotiating with people that are delivering goods, selling goods in and out of countries that are being tariffed. So, generally speaking, how this works when a tariff happens is the government will say, okay, we'll pay 10 to 15% of that, and we'll include that in a subsidy. So we'll take 10 to 15%. And then the guy who has, let's say it's Rona, they take delivery of the lumber. They'll go, okay, we'll eat, maybe 5% of that. The 80% that's left goes directly to you,
Mhm.
the person who is buying that lumber, the person who is buying that product, the person that's buying those goods. So when Donald Trump tells you that these tariffs are being paid by other countries, in no way, shape, or form is that happening. So if you bought something from China and it arrives tomorrow and you paid $1,000 for it, you're going to pay 1,005 extra dollars. So you're now paying $2,005 for something you paid $1,000 for.
Yeah.
And that goes directly to you. Otherwise, you leave it there and it gets sent back. So that's the real world implication of what a tariff is, what's going to happen tomorrow with wood, with China, with Canada, with automotives, the 25% on top of it. We're doing the same thing back to American vehicles. And that's to encourage in Canada. We got a glut of other European vehicles, Canadian made vehicles here. So we're just buying Canadian and European vehicles from now on. We can do that. In the United States, they can't.
You know what you're saying there, if you just think about everyone's just in terms of China, 104% on everything that comes from China. If you go around your house and see how much stuff was made from China, how much stuff you're buying every month on Amazon or Temu or whatever that's made in China, and double that, double the cost of that, that is what it's going to be the impact on your monthly bill. And that is significant for most Americans. I mean, most Americans cannot handle the additional $5,000 a month that is going to cost them for what they think now is the estimates. It could be way higher in terms of this trade war because the retaliation is raising even those estimates from 5,000
Yeah.
to much higher than above that. So, you got a situation now where people's monthly expenses are just doubling. It's the biggest tax we've had on the American consumer, on the middle class and lower class Americans in the history of America. It is absolutely criminal. And who does it land up helping? It ends up helping the very, very, very rich because they're still going to get their tax cuts. His plan is still to give them tax cuts.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he's going to devalue the American currency to make it worth less. That's going to create even more pressure on the dollar, and inflationary pressures. One thing that we're going to have a devaluation, and then just the general people just abandoning America. We don't even know what that's going to look like. It's going to turn America into a very different economic picture than we've had up to now. We've had a booming economy really for a very long time. America's done very, very well.
Because
And
America didn't do this.
yeah, and now they're cratering it on purpose, giving all this money to the rich, and harming the poor. I mean, what is that going to create? I mean, just the most dysfunctional, dystopian kind of society you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, so Susan Welch asked a great question. She's like, where does that money go? Like if you buy something for $1,000 and you got to get it out of Hawk for another $1,500 actually.
It goes to pay for
$1,050.
It goes to pay those tax cuts.
It goes to Donald Trump's government. It goes to the government of America.
Yeah.
So when he's telling you, and this is the fucking thing that I think there are so many people who are calling themselves patriots, like Jack Posobiec, who's like, I don't give a shit about my 401ks. I don't give a shit about the price of anything. We're resetting America. No,
you're not.
You just got hit with 105% tax on anything that you're going to buy or will ever buy from China. And that includes anything you buy domestically that gets brought in from China because they're going to raise those prices up. And 80 to 85% of that cost goes directly to you. So that's effectively, the biggest, as you pointed out, tax hike for lower and middle income people in the United States of America by a country mile.
At a time when they really can't afford it. I mean, most Americans are already struggling anyhow. And that tariff, let's say it's he's saying there's trillions and trillions of dollars that he expects to come in. Maybe there's $1 trillion, maybe it's 600 billion that he expects to come in the near term. What's he going to do with that money?
But you're paying it. That's the thing that people
taxpayers paying. Yeah, the taxpayers paying it.
He might get some of that money, but it's you that's giving it to him. It's not China. It's not Canada. It's not Brazil for fucking Brazil nuts. It's not Japan for fucking sushi paper. It's you, dude.
He's going to be balancing his budget. Now, his new budget includes these tax cuts for the rich, these massive tax cuts for the rich who really don't need it. They're getting big tax cuts because, trickle down and whatever. How's he balancing that out with? He's balancing it out with the taxes he's collecting on tariffs. Plus, he intends to use that money to pay down the debt, which is, again, debt that you haven't really accumulated. Maybe some of it is, but some of it is accumulated by these big corporations who've been spending like crazy, or out of control government spending, or a whole bunch of other things. And so that debt is being paid off by your taxes, not by anybody else's, not by China or Vietnam or anybody else. And on top of that, this whole strategy is going to make it impossible for any of these countries to really hold on to their U.S. reserves. They need to draw down on their U.S. reserves, which means there's billions and billions of U.S. dollars that are floating around in the world system, and they're going to be released into the system. That's going to create a flooding of the US dollar and a real devaluation of the US dollar. So the impact of this is massive. And the winner, really, if you ask me, and I've said it before, the winner lands up being China. Because China gets not only the US dollar being devalued to this great extent, the renminbi, which I never say correctly, is going to become the new equal to the US dollar choice of most countries for a currency reserve. And that is going to be a very, very big win for China. If you look at the kind of things that makes a superpower, having your currency respected as the standard for a currency reserve in any country, well, that's one of the key factors that makes you a superpower. America loses that incredible benefit that we've had all these years of being that standard bearer, and China gains it. And why do they gain it? Because of Donald Trump, which brings me back to where I started off with. He is too conflicted. He is way too conflicted to be trusted in this environment, to be negotiating anything with China. Does not make sense for a man whose current value is about $5 billion because of the Truth Social SPAC. And that money is all leveraged against Chinese capital interests. That is not okay. I mean, people need to be pointing out this incredible conflict of interest that Donald Trump has. He is beholden to China, and yet here he is negotiating a trade war with China. It's inexcusable.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And there's an alternative narrative out there that this is performative, that this is just an act, that he and China are going back and forth, him and Xi are going, we're going to win the tariff war. No, you're going to win the tariff war. Maybe that's the case. And if it is, it's even fucking sadder because we're paying the price.
America's paying the price. America's losing currently. I believe that America's losing this trade war to China, and it's because Donald Trump is is not acting in America's national interest. You can't find a single person out there with any credibility that he's saying, "Hey, this is a great idea, Donald Trump.
No.
You've done a good solid for the economy here. You really are achieving everything. You're making America great again." No, he's not making America great again. He's losing a trade war to China, which is the one thing that China has really wanted, is to defeat America's superpower status.
And listen, let's talk about that just for a brief second, and I'll let you wrap up and move on to the next part of our FiveStack. We've been banging away at it pretty good. Who do you think is going to win a war when it comes to oppressing their people with crushing financial disaster? Do you think it's going to be Donald Trump in America, where people have guns and they give a shit and they actually have money? Or do you think it's going to be China, who has their entire population of 2 billion people under their thumb? It's going to be China. America's not winning this war. If this is real, America's not winning. They'll just oppress the shit out of their own people, kill as many people as they can because they don't value human life. And Donald Trump is going to lose.
Look, I think the consequences of this war are incredibly real. But the war itself is kind of phony. It's a fake war between China and America because Donald Trump's in the middle of this, and they're pretending to be at a war to achieve the results they want. The sad thing is the realities of what this will create, the job losses, the cost of the economy, the price increases, the inflation, the devaluation, the literal lives, is going to be devastating for America, and also for it to reclaim its position as being the standard bearer, as having the good faith and credit of the United States. But that's gone. That's not going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
So it's so vital that Americans reject this out of hand, and they really need to be asking the question of, how did Donald Trump make all his money, and how tied is that to Beijing? And why is he now letting TikTok have another 75 days? How does that make sense? You're starting a trade war with the United States, but you're giving them another 75 days so they can figure out a deal to sell their big social media platform. I mean, it's all of this kind of stuff doesn't compute. Also doesn't compute that Hong Kong gets an out in all of this, but mainland China is included. His connections, by the way, Donald Trump's connections to China are through Hong Kong. That's where the money is that's funding his SPAC. That's where the money is that's coming to support all these crypto efforts. That's why it's important that everyone pay attention to him and his motivation. We've questioned it before in terms of Russia. We haven't spent enough time talking about China and Trump, and I think it's important that people start doing that. Speaking of which, next story is in Ukraine today. 2 Chinese soldiers were captured by the Ukrainian military. So this is Zelensky was out there early this morning saying, we have their documents, even their credit cards. They are citizens of China. I believe the United States of America needs to pay more attention to what is happening today. Zelensky goes on to say, we expect that China is now another country that supports Russia's invasion of Ukraine after Iran and North Korea. This is something we've all suspected all along. I mean, certainly we've known that China has been supporting Russia in terms of getting its equipment and its arms and all sorts of other, not so obvious ways to fight this war. But we've never seen the actual, Chinese soldiers on the battleground, and now we're seeing them. And, this to me is an indication that China is basically lifting the veil. It's declaring itself a opponent to democracy, a opponent to Ukraine, an opponent to the West, and is chipping in this war, in this devastating war. And it's something we've suspected a lot over the years, but now we know it's here. And I think it's crucial that everyone seems to understand, and America needs to understand, that it can't, the negotiation that Donald Trump is having with Vladimir Putin over Ukraine now is so disingenuous and so inconsiderate of the Ukrainians. But now we really know what it's about. It's also about China. and China fighting on behalf of Russia,
Mhm.
or with Russia, and Iran and North Korea. These are countries that are completely opposed to everything we stand for in the West, and we need to take a firmer ground on how we handle it. We can't continue these negotiations with Russia like nothing's happened.
Mm.
China's on the battleground.
Yeah, and they've been there a while.
Mm,
That's not new.
mm,
It was about 3, 4 months ago. There's a video that started to circulate of two, Asian-looking gentlemen, and you knew North Korea was in, right?
mm,
North Korea is using this as a way to train their people, a way to get close to Russia, open up their economy. Kim Jong Un and Putin did a deal. You give me a bunch of shit, give me a bunch of guys, cannon fodder, give me some howitzers, give me some equipment, and we'll send you some gas or oil or some fucking potatoes or something. Who
yeah.
gives a shit what it is? And so we knew North Koreans were there. So this video that was circulated was these two Asian guys writing, and they were in Donetsk, and they were writing on the wall, "I was here,"
Mm,
but it was noticed that they were writing in Mandarin, not Korean. So, there was this idea and this ferreted idea, and I talked to Alex de Rebeckoff, who does reporting for the ICC, that China had been sending people there all along for logistics,
mm,
for tech support. I don't want to get into that because they'll sound racist. For the same reasons that North Korea was sending people there, right? It's like, hey, give me some guys, give me some stuff, and let's see how this goes. Well, that was ferreted out and absolutely confirmed today. And it's not just two Russians or two Chinese nationals that they caught. It's several. They just
oh,
put
really?
several in front of the cameras today, and they admitted that they were from China. They admitted that they were brought in from China to fight in this war. They thought they were there fighting against enemy combatants. They weren't sure who they were. Two of the guys, not the two guys that were captured, had no idea where they were. They thought they were in Russia. That's what they were told. They were in Russia.
Mm,
They were conducting training exercises, a couple of them. But the two guys that were caught are singing like birds. They're like, yeah, like fuck. We're from China. We were sent here by our supreme leader. And it gives rise to the idea that the West has held off far too long sending foreign troops back as a result. The
mm.
West has held off far too long, and I mean EU countries that are democratically run. This is actually, even though it's a terrible fucking thing, and it indicts China as an enemy combatant in the Ukraine war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This kind of green lights Western troops to go in and do the same, does it not? It was a conversation I had with someone today, and
Sure
he's like,
does.
Keir Starmer, Macron, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're already seeing boots on the ground from other countries. You're just not hearing announcements about those boots on the ground
Yeah,
for
I mean,
Ukraine from other countries.
Reed is mentioning that Americans have been there for a long time. Of course, Americans have been there on the ground, but more on a logistical support basis. I don't think these guys were there in a logistical support basis. They were there fighting, and they've been captured. So how many more of them are there? We need to find out. But to your point, I think it absolutely opens the playing field and allows the European countries to step in with their troops. They've been dying to do it, and I think maybe it's time to do it. I mean, no one wants an escalation there, but what else are you going to do? You've got this clear axis forming between these countries that are, their intentions for the West are not
Iran, North
good.
Korea,
Yeah,
Iran and India are supplying parts and
yeah.
expertise for some of their drones. North Korea and China are flooding the zone with some of their enemy combatants and some military. Makes perfect sense to me that the rest of the free world goes, okay, game on. Let's send
Yeah.
some people there and let's make sure we take care of business.
Now, the last thing anyone wants is this escalating into a world war. But, this is where we're at. I mean, the reality of it is these two alliances are beginning to form very clearly on two
Mm.
sides of this war. And in context of what we've been talking about in terms of this trade war and the tariff war, to have China, playing this role as both a aggressor in Ukraine and an aggressor, I believe, in this tariff war through its proxy of Donald Trump. I mean, you've got a situation where China's really stepping out of its bounds in terms of what you'd expect from a nation that's supposedly responsible and cares about the globe and all these things. They're acting like the aggressors that
They
we thought
don't.
they were.
They
Of course,
don't.
of course,
They don't, dude.
but they like to pretend that,
Yeah, but that's that 5D chess we talked about yesterday, right?
Yeah.
They're going to flood the zone in Ukraine, but at the same time, they'll put out a statement going, you need to return all the Ukrainian land back to the Ukrainian people, and
Yeah.
the fighting needs to stop. They'll fight against Trump, they'll fight against Canada, but then they'll support Canada with a disinformation campaign for Mark Carney
Yes.
because It's like they're playing every side, and they
Hmm.
lie about every side that they're playing. It's what China does. It's what Russia does.
And the narrative they're putting out there in the world is that America is the bully right now in this trade war. America's not the bully in this trade war. It's Donald Trump who's potentially the bully, but then who is Donald Trump really answering to? Because then what they want the world to perceive is
Mm.
America as being a bad place, an evil place. But they're not. That's not, in fact, the truth, obviously. And that is the positioning that they're captured. But we've got to reverse that and explain that, if
Yeah.
their fighters have been caught on the ground there in Ukraine, guess what? They're the aggressor. They're the bully. They're the ones who are trying to, capture a sovereign country and return it to another country. It's untenable on every level. But it's very concerning, of course, that this has escalated to that level. Let's talk about the Canadian elections. We did number 5 and 4, by the way. At the beginning of the show was the the tariffs, a combo. But number 3 was the Ukrainian capturing the Chinese. Now let's do the Canadian elections. A lot happening there. At number 2, Mr. Canada.
Yeah, we've got an election going on here. April 28th, we're going to pick a new prime minister. Mark Carney is lapping the field, coming from 30 points back. We've talked about him in the disinformation campaign against him with Russia. Listen, this is a fascinating election because nobody in this election is voting for a political party or an ideology. The script has flipped where the United States was largely defined by, ideological bents, arguments, gaslighting. That decided the election. That and, do you want a black woman or a white man running your country? And racist America always comes out for the white guy. I mean, that's exactly what fucking happened.
Yeah.
So we're in this really interesting kind of vortex right now where, you've got 20 days. And what we're seeing, which is fascinating, is Pierre Poilievre, the dollar store version of Donald Trump, literally doubled down on being that guy while telling everybody he's not that guy. So something that happened yesterday, he had a rally just in Alberta, which is it's like the fucking, it's like the America's South. Canada's West is like America's South.
Yeah.
It's full of hillbillies and farmers.
Don't be so unfair. Don't be so unfair. Come on.
It is. No, I'm telling you the truth. It is. And
Some of it is very.
We've got a geographical intellect problem out there because not a lot of farmers finish university, right?
The Canadian deplorables, but not really, but yes,
No.
kind of.
So he goes to Alberta, and they gin up this arena full of people where about 6,000 to 7,000 people show up. They lie double the amount, just like Donald Trump. It's like Pierre Poilievre goes, I had 15,000 if I had a million. And no, he didn't, number one. Number two, most of the people, I would say half, according to some people that I know that are involved with the political with the Conservative Party, who, by the way, the people that I talk to that work with Pierre Poilievre are voting for Mark Carney. They're like, we can't fucking vote for this guy, but we need the paycheck, so we're going to keep fucking doing these rallies and pretending we're part of his ecosystem. It's
That's fantastic.
He's like, yeah, there was like maybe 7,200 people there max. He's telling everybody it's 7,500, and he's got this shit-eating grin today, and he goes on television, and it was this unbelievable Donald Trump-esque moment where he's like, have you ever seen rallies this big? Have you ever seen rallies this massive? I mean, Sir John A. Macdonald never had a rally like this. Canada's first prime minister who didn't ever do a rally. He was too drunk for those rallies. And I started dying laughing. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. He's incapable of doing anything else. And after he said that, it was hilarious because he got piled on by the Globe and Mail, which is usually a friendly newspaper. National Post is not. It's owned by Chatham Asset Management, which is a MAGA company. And you can literally see it in his face. Oh shit, I'm going to lose and I can't switch gears. Yeah. So I have to revert back to the only thing that I know, which is trying to tell everybody how important I am and how many people are going to come and watch me and how many people came out to my rallies, which is literally Trump 1-0 fucking
my crowd size are bigger than your crowd size. You know,
dude, it's and they're not. That's the fucking crazy part.
Even if they were, it's such a stupid thing to be, debating. Did I read correctly that he's a former loan collector? This is his credentials. That's what he's.
Who, Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting story too, because he really doesn't even have those credentials.
Oh, really?
No, he's just a dork.
So on the one
So
side, you've got Carney with the best resume in the entire planet, and the other side, you've got a guy who maybe collected loans for a car company, but maybe not.
yeah, no, it gets even better than that.
Yeah.
One side, you got a guy with his doctorate from Oxford. He's got his economic master's degree from fucking Harvard.
Yeah.
He's ran two of the biggest economies in the world, including the Bank of England, who've never had anybody who's not English in the 300 years of the Bank of England run the Bank of England, saved their asses for the last 10 years. Comes back to Canada, wants to get into private business. He gets sucked into politics, and he's like, I have to fix my country. We're broken financially. We need someone that's unbiased. He doesn't play the ideologue game. He doesn't talk about DEI. He doesn't talk about the trans stuff. He just is like, I'm here to do the business of government. But he's progressive in his climate values. His resume is as long as it gets. He's like a fucking board certified everything
It really
everywhere, and the most fucking recognized economist in the world. The world. Like, he saved Ireland on a weekend from bankruptcy. That's how fucking incredible this guy is. On the other side is this Pierre Poilievre guy who's literally sucked into himself at this point, going like this, and he's just repeating Trump talking points. And I'll give you his resume. He dropped out of University of Calgary, which I graduated from. Yes, thank you very much. I'm smarter than him. I've got better credentials than him. And he joined a couple of like religious fucking groups that were involved in politics, and then became Preston Manning's guy, was elected to Parliament at 24. At the age of 50, he has never done anything but that. He has been the most censured, most disrespected politician in Canada's history, and he's got a pension that he earned by the time he was 32 that he won't give up. He's never had a job outside of politics. He's never had a job outside of being an MP. He's never had a job outside the ones that were given to him by who supposedly his biological father, who he isn't. And nobody knows anything about this man's history, like nothing. So not only he's not qualified, and not only does he not have his background check, which Mark Carney got in 3 weeks, he's like, yeah, I need my national security background check. He's literally the most disrespected piece of shit politician we have ever had in this country.
And let's just underline, has no security clearance. So he can't even hear what threats the Canadian government or the Canadian people are under.
If America invades Zev, he'll be the last guy to find out. Even if he's the prime minister, he'll be like, well, we can't really talk to you about it. You're going to have to send someone else here.
So it's not much of a choice, clearly.
No.
It's and what's his slogan? Axe the tax. He's still going on about that. Yeah,
axe the tax, build the home, stop the crime. Yeah. It's always 3-word slogans.
Because that's all he can remember.
That's all he's got. It's fucking hilarious. Oh yeah, and he almost went to jail. One of his friends went to jail because he started a robocall company that was illegal back in the day as well. And he's got an agreement with Elections Canada that he'll never. Because he tried to prevent people from voting a few years ago and introduced a bill that was so egregious that Elections Canada is like, hey, by the way, time out. You're a terrible fucking human being. So, yeah, that's the guy that's running against Mark Carney.
So thank God for Canada, because right now, as the world is shaping up, we need a lot of Canada in the world. And if Mark Carney remains the Prime Minister, which he ought to, considering all that you've just said, we'll have a real defender there. He's becoming a real global champion. This guy's a real hero. People are talking about him around the world in glowing terms.
Yeah, BBC said the other day, and I thought it was great, they're like, hey, listen, the entire free world needs to go full Carney.
Yeah.
You know, because he's standing up to Donald Trump. He's fighting his terrorists.
Exactly. Has the right values.
He's not negotiating. You know how you heard Trump go, 70 countries wanted to negotiate with me? First of all, that's a lie. But some countries have come back to the table and said, okay, we'll negotiate. Like the EU, who represent a bunch of different countries. Ursula was like, okay, we'll go 0 for 0 tariffs. You know what Trump said yesterday? He goes, no, you're going to give me $350 billion, and I might think about taking the tariffs off. The EU is just going to ship me $350 billion. I mean, Mark Carney's not having that fucking conversation.
No.
Mark Carney is like, no, I'm not talking to you until this election's over, and I'm just going to keep dinging you with the same tariffs you ding us with, but more surgical, and we're going to hurt you worse because we've got raw materials. And if and when I win this election, I'm coming for you. I'm not negotiating with you, but I'm coming for you.
Look, I mean, Canada got sort of excluded from the tariff announcement, basically, to a large extent, not completely, but to a large extent got out of it. Let's get to the number one story. We mentioned at the top of the show, it's the AP winning this incredible victory over Donald Trump, and a victory for the First Amendment as well. I'm just looking at the court filings that came through. This was the Associated Press versus Taylor Budovich, who's can you believe this guy's the White House Deputy Chief of Staff? I mean, just shocking if you know his history. The memorandum order says about 2 months ago, President Donald Trump renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. The Associated Press did not follow suit. For that editorial choice, the White House sharply curtailed the AP's access to coveted, tightly controlled media events with the president. The AP now sues the White House chief of staff, her communications deputy, and the press secretary, seeking a preliminary injunction enjoining the government from excluding it because of its viewpoint. Today, the court grants that relief. But this injunction does not limit the various permissible reasons the government may have for excluding journalists from limited access events. It does not mandate that all eligible journalists, or indeed any journalists at all, be given access to the president or non-public government spaces. That's interesting. It does, but it does not prohibit the government from freely choosing which journalists sit down with the interviews or which one's questions they answer. And it certainly does not prevent senior officials from publicly expressing their own views. So the court merely says it's upholding that under the First Amendment, if the government opens its doors to some journalists, be it to the Oval Office, the East Room, or elsewhere, it cannot then shut those doors to other journalists because of their viewpoints. It's very important. The Constitution requires no less. So this is a big deal. It goes on to, there's a lot more here, but people should check it out themselves. But this is a big win for the AP, a big win for journalism, and at a time when freedom of speech is being curtailed in many, many ways. This is a Trump-appointed judge, by the way. It's good that the AP has won this, and the Gulf of Mexico remains the Gulf of Mexico. Hallelujah. And that is the number one story on the show today.
Yeah, great story. And I would love to pick your brain, because you're a seasoned executive in media in the United States, to finish the show, because I think it's a huge victory for, 130-year-old organization, 140-year-old organization. It could be off by a decade or two.
The
AP,
White House.
the AP.
Oh, yeah, that's 130, I think.
Yeah, but and they're really a bellwether of media that supply other media with really quality talking points. But as a seasoned executive in media, someone that's worked in the United States, that's very familiar with the White House press pool. What does this mean to media in the United States?
Look, the press pool, that place, the briefing room in the White House is really a special place. If you've been there, you will realize how much power and attention is focused on that point. When the president walks out, or even the White House spokesperson walks out and stands behind that podium, it has so much value. Every camera in the world is focused on that. When a reporter in that White House press pool gets an opportunity to ask a question of the president of the United States or one of his guests, it could be another world leader, it could be anybody, you are shaping the narrative of what's going to be in the news for the next day or the next 24 hours. It is not just an empty position when you go and observe. You're participating. The questions matter. When I worked at CBS on the early show, this was during the Obama presidency. The questions we asked in the morning were a big deal. We had our own White House correspondent there, and we would think a lot about what the questions were going to be to define the next 24 hours. Because we were a morning show, we needed to make sure the questions we asked, we're going to take the story forward, we're going to move the story forward. So what's the next stage of that, and how do we ask it in a way that we get the most out of that answer? Because you maybe get a shot at one or two questions every day. But it's so critical. This is where the America wakes up. The agenda is set in that briefing room. So to have a organization like the Associated Press, a venerable organization which has for years been the standard bearer, you go to the AP because you want to know the facts. You don't want their opinions, you want their facts. And they're not really filled with any partisan politics or anything like that. They just give you the raw facts. That's what the journalists there do. You go to them for that reason. So for them not to be allowed because they're being accused of bias is ridiculous. And then on top of that, for them to be replaced by all these partisan podcasters and shock jocks, not to offend you, the shock jocks, but you know what I mean. But partisan players on there that are basically pushing an agenda, a right-wing Putin Kremlin agenda. There's lots of people there associated with the Kremlin, as we mentioned at the start of the show.
Like Tim Pool, who's in the White House press pool now, yeah.
But there's more. There's all these other, organizations, everything from Newsmax to
Breitbart.
Or the Right Something Network. I don't know what it's called. The
Right Stuff.
The Right Stuff Network or something like that. But, these are not real journalists. OAN was the other one.
No.
These are the One America Network. These are not journalists. They're basically operatives for foreign governments, and they are pushing agendas. So when they ask a question of the president or the White House spokesperson in the briefing room, it carries a completely different weight. And what it does is it foments and increases disinformation. Because if you go and ask the White House spokesperson about some disinformation story that they're trying to push, some agenda, some narrative that they're trying to create in the disinformation space, and they respond. Now you've got a legitimization. It's almost like a laundering of that disinformation into reality and into the mainstream. And that's where it's so critical that the journalists that get into that briefing room and that the White House Correspondents Association, which used to be the people who determined who was in that pool, they are, it's vital that they remain independent and that they keep to their ability to choose who sits there, because it matters a lot. It matters a lot whether this information. You saw the other day with the TASS journalist that showed up during the Zelensky press conference. If that is not a controlled mechanism, TASS is a spy organization for the Russians. So suddenly they're asking questions, they're spraying the room. You're going to get a very different message out of the White House than you are if you're going to have the legitimate journalists like the Associated Press. It's terrific that they're back in there.
I thank you for that incredible insight into why this is as important as it is from a cultural perspective, from a professional perspective, from a narrative perspective. And I think a good place to end up is, Canada is no different. And I put out a video the other day that people seem to resonate with people, trying to explain to everybody that there are a couple outlets in Canada. There's one specifically called Post Media. They own every single media, biggest daily newspapers across Canada. Post Media is 66% owned by a company called Chatham Asset Management. I believe we've talked about them here. They have turned into what Donald Trump's White House press corps is, what they want everybody in the White House to be, which is the laundering of reality. It is the bending of reality towards an idea. It is the weaponization of facts in a post-truth society. And they're literally owned and funded by a mega hedge fund, a mega funded, mega
David
managed.
Pecker.
David Pecker's Chatham Asset Management owns all the daily newspapers here in Canada.
Can I remind people who David Pecker is? This is the guy who used to run the National Enquirer, the organization that basically covered up for Donald Trump on the Stormy Daniels story. This is the organization that paid Stormy Daniels,
and Karen McDougal, and E. Jean Carroll. Yeah.
So this is not journalism. This is like a I don't know what you would call it, but it's not a journalistic organization. It's a operation designed to hide and scandals and basically defend the president against the indefensible. That's basically what David Pecker.
Yeah, it's a weaponized media organization that gets paid to protect high net worth people, hide their secrets, promote them as good people when they're really fucking not. Well, we have that here too.
They run the Canadian newspaper chains, the biggest ones.
All of them. Yeah, all of them.
It's crazy.
And the only people that Pierre Poilievre up in our country, the dollar store version of Donald Trump, who's going to get his ass kicked. Because Canada, we're not a liberal, we're not a conservative country. We're a liberal country. We're a progressive country. Crowd sizes don't matter. We're way smarter than the average human being. We like to read. We can see through the bullshit. But Pierre Poilievre will only allow post media companies to come with him on his plane. Pierre Poilievre will only allow post media companies to interview him or ask questions. And it escalated this last week to the point where his own staff were assaulting reporters that worked with agencies that wanted to ask a question, like the CBC, Toronto Star, other organizations that weren't aligned or funded by Maple MAGA and MAGA interests like Post Media, where they started pushing and shoving male and female reporters who weren't associated with the people they wanted to get them to ask pre-vetted questions for. And if you needed any more indication, if you're watching this and you're like, is Pierre Poilievre really like that? Yes. They've set up the same ecosystem. They've got the same game plan. They have absolutely zero respect for media, zero respect for facts, zero respect for truth. It is simply a psyop. You're living in the United States, the MAGA sim right now, because they have captured or threatened everybody that has the ability to tell the truth about them. And that's why you've seen Donald Trump call the media the enemy of the people. That's why Pierre Poilievre wants to defund the CBC, taxpayer, not government, a taxpayer-funded national media organization, who are literally the only people not allowed to ask him questions at events. And if they try to ask questions, they do what they did at the wharf in Newfoundland the other day, where Pierre Poilievre gets this, he was like 22-year-old fucking meathead that was like standing there with his arms like, you can't ask questions, shoving people. And Pierre's walking around doing photo ops like this. while reporters are getting assaulted, physically assaulted behind him
Terrific.
because they're not
Terrific.
working with mega funded agencies. So there you go. Nice thing to wrap up. Really glad
Yeah.
the AP won, and I hope the CBC follows suit up here.
Just to add to that, the importance of the press in this time like this is so vital. And what we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing in America is just a general chill in the way that reporters are covering this story, covering any story. People are scared. The way they operate on a day-to-day basis has changed so dramatically. They have to keep a lot more secret
Yeah,
files. Just the way they can't operate in the open way they used to. They're under pressure. They're under threat. They're probably being monitored at every single conversation that they have.
yeah,
So, the role of independent media, including like yourself, Dean, in your great Substack, I think is so vital that there are people out there who are putting out that independent voice, providing a independent perspective of what's going on in the Canadian elections in this lead up to the polls there, because we are, the more we head into this territory of dictatorship, of authoritarianism, the more the media becomes more crucial. We've seen it everywhere in the world. The
yeah.
media becomes the enemy. And it takes independent journalists like yourself to really stand up
And
there
you.
and thank you. And, just really to stand up and fight the good fight. And so my question to everyone today is, if you haven't yet subscribed to Dean Blundell Substack. Why haven't you subscribed to Dean Blundell Substack? You can go do that at deanblundell.substack.com. You can subscribe to mine at narrative.org, narrativ.org. And, sorry, what was
And
it?
no, I'm thank you. Yes,
Okay.
your Substack is much better than my Substack. My Substack exists because your Substack exists because you forced me onto this platform, and I couldn't
But
be
I
more
think your crowd
grateful.
sizes are bigger than my crowd sizes. So,
They totally are.
so
I don't even think the guy who invented Substack has a bigger crowd than I do.
you got the
But
biggest crowd size for
but
sure.
I have been, yeah, I've been blown away by the support. And I put a tweet out the other day saying, it was a couple months ago, I was ready to kind of pack in the
Yeah.
reporting, the talking about these things, informing people, because I'm like, who gives a shit anymore? We keep losing. Then I found Substack, thanks to you. And I've been blown away by everything to do with it, from the subs to the support to the interaction to the normal conversations that you get to have with your subscribers and people who follow you. And so what I've done is I've given people, if you go to my Substack, if you go into this thing, I'll give you a gift, and that gift is you can get a lifetime membership for the price of a yearly membership, which is already discounted. We will be paywalling, but not for a while. And I want to thank everybody, and that was a little gift that I gave to you. So you get a lifetime membership over there for less than what a yearly membership would be, because I really fucking love you people, and I'm really
That's
grateful
amazing.
that you've been part of my life over the past month and a half. So thank you.
I think I might even match that. We'll see about that. I got to
Do
say
it.
that I only survive because of the people on Substack. I just wouldn't make it through every month doing the work I do. You just
Mm.
can't do it. So, everyone who is a paid subscriber, even if you're not a paid subscriber, every subscriber is so
Doesn't
valuable
matter. Yeah.
because it just gives us another opportunity to be heard and another set of eyes to look at our content and to share that content. But the paid subscribers as well. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And right now, as we said just now, it's the most important thing that we have independent media covering the story as it is. I will ask people to go check out on my narrative.org right now. I just posted a story before we got on the air about Donald Trump and his ties to China. And I wish other journalists would just start looking at this and asking really important questions about whose side is Donald Trump really on in this escalating trade war, because I think it's an important question that everyone needs to start
I can't wait to read
asking.
that. I know, because we were talking about it before, but no one does a better investigative dive into Elon Musk, China, and these relationships.
Yeah.
So go and connect with Zev. Go and sub to his Substack, because he is the best at it. And people have tried for so long to silence that man, and I'm really grateful to be doing this podcast and to have you as a friend. So thank you.
I'm going to go sign up for a year-long membership so I can get the lifetime bonus. Thanks
That's
very
right.
much, Dean.
You
And thank
too.
you, everyone at home, for watching this FiveStack tonight. We'll see you
Thanks,
tomorrow
man.
night. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.